But for today, as we did yesterday, I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the scene at the burning bush, which is one of the featured scenes of this week's Torah portion. And I will share my screen. I just want to spend a few minutes immersing in the text and understand some traditional understandings of that passage to illustrate really how the principles of Jewish mindfulness practice really are reflected in the language of the Torah itself, as well as in the commentaries. So I'm going to share my screen, and thanks to Kat for putting the link to today's text sheet, and then we'll move into practice as well, although studying the text itself with an open mind and with curiosity, as we'll see, is itself a practice. So, of course, the scene is set when Moses goes off with the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, and takes the flock, as I mentioned yesterday. I'm going to highlight the words here, Achar Hamidbar. Here's the transliteration, and it means not just really into the wilderness, but Achar Hamidbar is taken to mean to the edge, the far part of the wilderness. It's deep in the wilderness, and comes to the Mount of God, Horeb, one of the names of Sinai. Two commentaries here, one by Sforno, medieval Italian commentary, who says Moses was all by himself. I mentioned yesterday he's kind of went off on a retreat. He wanted to pray and meditate at the mountain in complete isolation and concentration. And the Ha'amek HaDavar, who's a 19th century commentator, the Netziv, says it very clearly. Moses is on a spiritual quest. He's not just wandering around with the flock, he's on a spiritual quest. This is intentional. He's traveling deeper into the wilderness, searching ever more deeply into the spiritual realm. So this is a spiritual practice. It's not a happenstance that Moses has this experience. He prepares himself for it. The next verse, this is all the first verses of chapter 3 of the book of Exodus. It says, Vayera malach Adonai elav, an angel of the Holy One appeared to him in a blazing bush out of fire. You might notice here, actually, in the language that it's, if you're familiar with the earlier Torah portions, the Torah portion Vayera, where Abraham is sitting at the entrance to his tent and notices the three strangers, the three angelic visitors passing by. There's an echo of that language here as well. Not that he sees the angel or sees God, but the angel appears to him. Some kind of maybe lesser aspect of the divine catches his attention. And then it says, Vayar v'hine, he looked and beheld. So there's a progression here. That's also the same language used with Abraham, who is described as lifting his eyes, seeing and beholding. Here he's gazing and beholding, and he notices there's a bush aflame, but not consumed. And Moses speaks up and says, Asura na ve'er'eh, I must turn aside to look at this mar'eh, this wondrous sight. Madua, why doesn't the bush burn up? So it's kind of he's expressing curiosity here, turning aside, saying, what is this? What is this? Why? And in verse 4, Vayar Adonai ki sar lir'ot, when the Holy One saw that Moses had turned aside to look, then and only then is there a moment of revelation where God calls to him, Moshe, Moshe, and he answers, Hineni. I mentioned yesterday that this, to me, is one of the paradigmatic stories of mindfulness as reflected in Torah. And I'm just going to take a look at these three commentaries on that passage. One has to do with what is the degree of curiosity that is necessary to have this kind of epiphany or revelatory moment, or shall we say, the experience of being flush with the divine, of having contact with the divine. In the Midrash, Rabbi Yochanan says, Moses took 3 steps forward. What is this turning aside? Well, Rabbi Yochanan said that means he took 3 steps forward. But I love the next one, which is that Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish insisted he didn't step forward at all. He just turned his neck to observe, and that was enough. And the Holy One of Blessing then said to him, because nitzarta lirot, because you took the trouble to look, to turn aside, be assured you will merit, I will reveal myself to you. And that's why the verse goes on to say, God called him Misabos. In other words, it's the curiosity that elicits from the divine a response and a moment of deep connection. There's a pretty well-known bit of midrash and teaching here that from the burning bush, we learn that there's no place, even a bush, even the most mundane, seemingly insignificant place or moment, there is no place devoid of the divine presence. Or as the Zohar puts it, late atar panui mine, there's no place devoid of the divine. And finally, a medieval commentator, Rabbi Ben Asher, says, the bush represents the material aspect of existence which burns with supernal fire, spiritual energy, yet remains unconsumed. In other words, the bush is really symbolic here. The bush is all of the material reality. And all of material reality burns with supernal fire, with divine energy, yet is unconsumed by that, is able to withstand that, is able to contain that. Okay, and I'm going to stop the share. And there's a poem that we will end with in a moment, but I just wanted to go a little bit deeper than we went yesterday in terms of noticing that practice. So we have a beautiful, simple outline for practice today of, and first of all, everyone has come to the edge of the wilderness today. You all made time in your day to come here, right? So you are your own spiritual journey, and we all have come to the same mountain, even though we're in different places. We're all at the same mountain, and we've all come to turn aside from the usual daily distractions to look more closely. And what are we looking at? We're looking at what is actually true right now for me, without any preconceptions, without any judgments about what we're going to find, just being curious. And so here's the simple but not so easy instruction for today, is to see if you can notice when you are in a mode of curiosity rather than conviction, that is knowing, when you're in a state of being open instead of closed. And can you stay curious about it? So that's one. Actually, I'm going to offer two suggestions. One is to say, moment by moment, can I notice, am I curious right now or am I not curious right now? Which is related to the second, which is people, including myself, will often report being bored during meditation. It's boring. Nothing's happening. Not doing anything. There's no entertainment. There's no distraction. And so I want to invite you to consider what to notice boredom as a state of your awareness at any given moment, and notice what happens when you feel bored. You know, I have three adolescents or pre-adolescents constantly complaining, I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored. And part of me wants to say, good, good. Welcome the boredom. Welcome the boredom. Harris is asking, can you do the same thing with feeling sleepy? Yeah, you can notice that. Oh, and because feeling sleepy might be related to feeling bored. I'm not stimulated. I'm not entertained. And so the mind and the body may, under those circumstances, may begin to shut down and go into sleepiness. When you do feel, if that happens and you feel sleepy, see if you can notice, oh, I'm feeling sleepy, and see if you can remain alert. It might mean adjusting your posture, or maybe rubbing your hands together, doing something that helps you come back to being alert. And of course, if you fall asleep, that's not a problem. That's totally fine. So that's our invitation for today. An invitation into boredom, an invitation into curiosity, an invitation to doing nothing but noticing with curiosity what is happening for us. So let's move into the practice as if we haven't already, by finding a position here at the bush, your own bush, our collective bush, and grounding ourselves on that holy ground by putting this, if it's available to you, to put the soles of your feet on the floor, making contact, make contact with the floor, making contact with the chair, or whatever you're sitting in or on, or if you're standing, just feeling the support beneath you, holding you up. And even that alone is a good starting place, just to say to ourselves, oh, I am supported. I am held right now. And we breathe. Again, take breaths, we receive breaths. And let that animate our material being. Because we're that bush too. We are finite material being infused with divine presence. And all we're doing is waking up to that reality. And the breath can feed those embers and flames. The breath and the soul are connected. Might help as we begin to do a gentle scan of your body, if that's comfortable for you, and just noticing places where there is tension or whatever you're feeling right now, where your emotions are expressing themselves in your body, in your gut, in your chest, your shoulders or neck, in your jaw or your temples or your face, anywhere really, your fingers, maybe unfurling the hands a little bit, letting them rest on your thighs or in your lap. And as we receive the breaths, to allow all those places of constriction to slowly opening the channels. And now we'll move into just sitting together in silence. The silence that we can only find in the deepest part of the wilderness, where there's no sound at all, where the stillness is palpable and we can feel it resonating with the stillness inside each one of us. So let's sit with curiosity, with intention, with love. Maybe your mind has responded to doing nothing by constructing stories, narratives, and we just notice stories arising in our mind to entertain us, to attract us, to distract us, to take us out of whatever we're feeling. And we let them pass like clouds in the sky, come back to the breath, to the sensation, to sound, to this, which is one of the names for God in our tradition, Zot. Or if you're feeling sleepy, out of your boredom, you can maybe straighten your posture. If you're slumped over, wake yourself up. Staying with curiosity, witnessing. Last few minutes of our sit together. You're welcome if you'd like to turn the corners of your mouth up a little bit to a little smile to see whether and how that shifts things in your body, maybe activates a little bit of compassion and love, a little bit of lightness. Doesn't have to be so serious. Finding joy in the curiosity of not having to know, of just being open to whatever is unfolding. And you can stay with that as I share a poem called Everyday Grace. everyday grace. It can happen like that. Meeting at the market, buying tires amid the smell of rubber, the grating sound of jackhammers and drills. Anywhere we share stories and grace flows between us. The tire center waiting room becomes a healing place as one speaks of her husband's heart valve replacement, bed sores from complication. A man speaks of multiple surgeries, notes his false appearance as strong and healthy. I share my sister's death from breast cancer, her youngest only 7. A woman rises, gives her name, Mrs. Henry, then takes my hand. Suddenly, an ordinary day becomes holy ground. And if your eyes have been closed, I want to invite you now to let them open. Shifting our awareness from looking inward to looking back out at the group. And thank you for practicing together. Thank each other for showing up. And we take a few moments here to continue our practice in the form of the recitation of the Mourner's Kaddish. So for those of you who are in mourning, or it's a yard site, or you participate in the Kaddish, you're welcome to do so. You can put the name or names of anyone you're honoring today in the chat box. If you're not reciting Kaddish, really encourage you to stay present to help create a minyan for those who are, as a continuation of your practice of just staying present and being here for each other. Thanks to Kat, who's holding our space as always, beautifully, for sharing the words of the Kaddish on the screen. And if you're reciting Kaddish, I invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit to recite the words together, and you can unmute at this time. Yitkadal, Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Yamad Yivra Chizikei V'Yamek Malchutei, V'chayichon V'Yamechon Eid All Beit Israel, Agala
Imru, Amen.
Shmei Rabbah Mevarach,
Yishtabach, Har Vietadar,
Halal Shmei Ila
Ila
Ben Kol Brakata V'Shurata At Nefesh Miran Bahama
in
through
Maraba,
Shlama Rabba Mitzvah Vahodi
Shalom,
Shalom Shalom Aleinu
V'yakol Yisrael, V'kol ha'olam,
Amen.
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 Friends, thanks so much for joining us today. I want to wish everyone Shabbat Shalom, a sweet Shabbat. This was a beautiful opportunity for us to enter in together, and I hope really you have a wonderful Shabbat, even if it's just having a few minutes for practice. And we'll look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Remember, no, we won't be meeting on Monday in observance of Martin Luther King Day this Monday. So we'll see you next week from Tuesday through Friday. And as always, I welcome those of you who would like to stay on. And if you'd like to just to continue to sit together and use our time in the container of this community, that's great until we end at about 1:15. If you're leaving us now, Shabbat Shalom, and we hope to see you next week. And I am very happy to respond to questions about the text or to go back over that poem if you'd like. And thanks. Oh, I see. Okay, a bunch of questions already. Thank you. So the poem, start there. Let me share. I'm just going to share that poem again. It's there are many, many, many wonderful poems about, I think, where kind of everyday situations, mundane situations, turn out to be uh, places where one experiences the divine. I love this one because there are a few places more mundane than the waiting room at the tire center or the auto repair place. And I love that this poet, Stella Nasanovich, don't know who she is. I don't remember how I came across this. Has this experience where connection and grace, the stories that are shared and the grace that's experienced through human connection suddenly gives rise. And as she ends it, suddenly an ordinary day becomes holy ground. Really a beautiful description of the transformation or the infusion of the everyday, what appears to be profane in the sense of not being holy, full of holiness. It's a shoal, basically. That tire center room becomes a shoal with this sharing of vulnerabilities. Just love that. Yeah, thank you, Sabrina. Appreciate that. And I saw there were a couple other questions. Let me just scroll up for a minute. Okay. Well, Shefa, thank you. I see. I don't know if Shefa's still here, but so Shefa Gold, Moses turns aside before the revelation can happen. What is he turning from? What are we turning from when we attempt to turn towards revelation? What a great question. I'll have to answer for myself. Somebody asks me that question. What am I turning from? I guess, in a simplest sense, I guess, turning away from that which distracts me from what is happening on a deeper level, that which keeps me kind of on the surface of reality, and which may entertain me, but ultimately is not, doesn't really feed me, doesn't really fulfill me. It's like, the junk food of life, I guess. Whatever it might be, mindless TV or I do all of these things, of course, spend a lot of my time on the surface. And so going on retreat or making a decision to come to a meditation session or any kind of spiritual practice is a kind of say, I'm going to let that down. I'm going to put that down for a little bit. I'm going to intentionally turn towards something under the surface. At least that's for me. I'd be great. People want to respond to that question that Shefa posed. That would be wonderful. I'll try to keep an eye on those. Let's see. Meg has asked where the zot is used. I remember learning that from Danny Matt, translator of the Zohar into English. I don't remember offhand the exact location of it, but the Hebrew word zot, this, is associated in Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah with the Shekhinah, with the feminine aspect of the divine or the most imminent aspect of the divine. And it's just a beautiful teaching that God is, essentially it says, God is this. God is this and this and this and this, whatever the this is, meaning everything, this moment, this place. It's a very helpful, I think, spiritual focus phrase or mantra, particularly when we're in a place where we think God is not here, right now. As a reminder, say that God is, the divine is present, even in this place that seems insignificant, this bush, this little lowly bush. So that's my understanding, that it's used in the Zohar in that way. Thanks to Marc for sharing this Mary Oliver, the link to Mary Oliver's poem Praying. Really spiritual poetry, mindfulness-based poetry all does this, right? This, my colleague, Rabbi Pam Wax, who's in the Berkshires, who has led a few of our meditation sessions, led a session for our clergy alumni yesterday on poetry as spiritual practice, and really lifted up a number of examples of one, which you might want to look up. I don't have the reference handy, but I think it's called the Synagogue of Green Grass, which is really about mowing, about these sons learning how to mow the lawn on Saturdays from their father, and about how that becomes a synagogue, a spiritual experience. And there's so many wonderful poems about that, where it just take places that seem unlikely as places of revelation that actually turn out to be very, very powerful. And poetry can really lift that up. Let's see, Lauren. When anxiety gets the better of me during meditation, I turn on meditation music. Is that okay, or defeating the meditation? It's totally okay. Again, maybe I'll say a word about that, and I preface it by saying I'm not an expert in this particular aspect of meditation, and I'm not necessarily drawing a connection with trauma, but the usual prompts for meditation, such as paying attention to the breath, or even paying attention to the body and doing a body scan, for many of us can evoke trauma response and make it very difficult for us to stay present, actually, which is contrary to the intention, obviously. And my understanding is that in such situations, when we notice that, and it's very important to pay attention to that and not to say, I've got to stay with the breath, or I've got to stay with the body sensations, that other prompts or other anchors may be very helpful, including sound, or looking around the room and naming 5 things, or looking behind us, because it really has to do with a sense of feeling safe. So maybe it may be that if we find ourselves feeling, having kind of a freeze or flight reaction when we're in meditation, that we need to pay attention to that, and change it up. If the eyes have been closed, maybe open the eyes and look around. I think the key is to find an anchor that evokes a sense of safety and ease, so that we can pay attention. At least that's my rudimentary understanding of that. So I would say, Lauren, best as I know, that's really good taking care of yourself, and others might want to follow your lead on that and have music handy. And okay, scrolling down, let's see. Oh yeah, Amichai. Thanks, Mir. There are so many great poems on this. Let's see. Okay, Susan, I had trouble keeping my mind on the word curiosity during the meditation. An inspiration about my volunteer life passed through, which was important to me. I felt the inspiration was more important than the instruction to put aside thoughts, except the word curiosity. That's great, Susan. Thank you for that. All right, Lester, you suggested that we notice if we've collapsed or some other postural inattention. Rabbi Ari Lev invited us to stay and just notice. Thoughts on that? Okay, I don't know if there's I don't think there's a right answer on that. On the one hand, here's the Jewish answer, right? On the one hand, for example, and I've learned this as well from my teachers, if you're feeling sleepy and you fall asleep, that's just fine. Maybe that's just what you need to do right now. So if you're slumped over and you're falling asleep, then okay, go with it. You can fall asleep. On the other hand, you also could have the intention to say, oh, I'm falling asleep, I'm slumping over. I want to wake. I want to stay present. I want to stay with my practice, and I'm going to, straighten up. That's what I do. Like I notice, because my inclination is to slump. I'm a slumper, and I need a reminder. Oh yeah, sit up straight. And when I do that, I notice I am more present. So either or is, I think. I'm not sure how satisfying that answer is, but All right, and thank you so much. Is it possible I can lead meditations more often? I will be doing. Just a note that, as those of you who have been around know, we've been doing a series of week-long meditations. We're not doing one this month. We originally had planned to, but that didn't come to fruition. But in February, we will be back to doing a week, once a month, a week-long series with a teacher, and I'm scheduled to do a week-long series in May. In February, Kashira Halev Fife, Kohenet Kashira Halev Fife, who has led many times but hasn't been with us lately, who's an IJS faculty fellow this year, will lead a week-long series, I think the second week in February. And then my colleague, Rabbi Miriam Margolius in March, and I think Sam Feinsmith in April, I think. And I'm in May, and Rebecca Schisler in June, or maybe Rebecca in March and Sam in June, I don't remember. And just looking for one more question, Ricky. Doesn't Adonai work in space-time? Those are not separate. And aren't we a refugee people whose wisdom is to create holy spaces in every wilderness we inhabit? Yeah. So let me say a word about that. I don't know if I saw the previous note, Ricky. I missed that. So I'm just going with your question. And I think this is kind of, for me, Judaism in a nutshell, in a way, and in terms of its relation to this, what we do every day in this practice, and the centrality of Shabbat is that our intention is to cultivate an awareness of being in divine presence by setting aside time. And that's, yesterday somebody asked the question about holiness as separation. So we separate ourselves, or like Shefa said earlier, raised the question about what are we turning aside from. On Fridays, we're turning aside from, or letting go of, or releasing certain pulls on us so that we can immerse more deeply in an awareness which we are meant to bring to everything that happens over the course of the week. This, in the mundane reality, broken reality in which we live, and to notice the holiness that's present there, or to elevate it into our awareness. It's not that it's not there; it's always there. The holiness is there on Shabbat and not on Shabbat, and our goal here in this practice is to take hopefully what we receive from this practice and bring it into and infuse it into the rest of our lives. I hope that goes to your question, Ricky. All right, we are at time, and I'm grateful, feeling very grateful, of course, to Kat for holding our space, and for all of you for your incredible dedication and showing up for yourself and for each other every day. And I really wish you a sweet Shabbat of having a taste of that presence and awareness of holy ground beneath your feet. And look forward to seeing you next week. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Great to be with you.